Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me today. As promised, I will do video in English and this is gonna be my first video for the year. Thank you very much for those that have followed me, that have supported me. Welcome to the new subscriber. I'm not gonna dwell on what we've done last year. If you want to see what we've done, obviously there are videos. Go and check onto the channel. You will see a lot of video covering the Jeffrey Epstein saga, the Ghislaine Maxwell, the Jean-Luc Brunel arrest. Today, I want to take you on a different path, on a different adventure. We're going to follow an individual, a Frenchman, a retired Frenchman, which was arrested in Jakarta in Indonesia. I'd like to talk to you about his story because his story is linked with the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Stay with us. Let's go right into it. All right, guys, our story is going to take us to Jakarta, the Indonesian capital in Southeast Asia. We are end of June 2020. The police is receiving a tip-off from concerned citizens, concerned neighbors about a man that is suspected of exploiting children in a nearby hotel. So, of course, the police came to investigate and they will find a man with two girls, very young girls. One is nude, and the man will be identified as Francois Camille Abello. He's a Frenchman, a retired Frenchman, and he will be placed immediately under arrest. It will be actually transferred to a Jakarta detention center where he will be interrogated. Now, the police is going to explain to us, especially a lady, I think it's called Nana Sujana, and she will explain to us during her investigation that she found out that Mr. François Camille Abello had actually a modus operandi. What he will do is he will go to supermarket, he will go to malls, he will go on the streets, basically approach children, offering them a career in modeling. They will be able to make money. He will offer them 250,000 up to 1 million rupees, which is the equivalent of 17 or up to 70 dollars, so quite a bit of money for kids on the streets. He will lure them into the room and eventually will offer them to have sex with him. That's Mr. Abello modus operandi. So what we found that was quite disturbing in the police report after they've interviewed victims and neighbors is that not only did Abello targeted these young children in mall and supermarket, but he actually offered his victims to recruit their friends and to bring them back to the hotel, back to the studio. They actually found, you can read in the police report, that they found micro camera placed in the walls so that Abello could recruit all his sexual, deviant, nefarious act with children. We're talking about young girls, but we are also talking about young boys. Now, police believe that Mr. Abello actually have abused children for a long period of time. With the material that they found in the room, in his hotel room, it was absolutely impossible that Mr. Abello has been done that for just a week or two. The amount of material suggested that this has been going on for quite some time. And this will be confirmed also by our investigation, since we found out that Mr. Abello was never a resident of Indonesia. He was actually entering the country on a tourist visa. He will apply for an extension for about a month before exiting the country and re-entering the country with a new tourist visa. And this is a modus operandi of a lot of predators. They don't want to be seen as residents. They're just coming as tourists to elude the immigration or the police. We saw that with Christian Bruckner, which was accused allegedly of abducting Madeleine McCain in Portugal. He was never a resident there. He was always coming as a tourist and seen as a tourist. So there is an MO here for sure. Now, what we're going to look into now is what they found in this room, what the police actually, discovered during their investigation, during basically their search in the hotel room. 2 weeks after Abello's arrest, on Thursday the 9th of July, the police going to parade Francois Abello to the media in a press conference. They will confirm during this conference that they found a tremendous amount of material on Abello's computer that clearly prove that he had illegal sex act with more than 300 kids, 305 children aged 10 to 17. So Mr. François Abello was arrested by the police, and this is what they found in his possession. He had 21 items of clothing that were worn by the victims. He had 6 memory cards. He had a laptop, 20 contraceptives, and 2 vibrators, plus 6 cameras. Now, 6 cameras, this is not just a normal tourist. This is not even sex tourism. What we are talking about here is sex, pedo, porno, photographic business. And that's what Abello was doing. And then it's an operation, and it probably likely extended to sex trafficking. But that we will look and we will talk about it a bit later. So where are we going with this investigation? Let me give you the heads up. What we're trying to do here is to provide you with the link between the Abello affair and the Jeffrey Epstein affair. There is a link, we found it, and we're going to unpack. First, what we're going to do is to finish with the Indonesian inquiry, looking at what are the findings, what's going to help us to better understand the man. The first thing we know through our investigation is that Mr. Abello completely refused to cooperate with the Jakarta, the Indonesian police. Didn't want to give the password, didn't want to give them absolutely anything. He was caught hand in the bags, but then he was buying time. He was not interested in cooperating. He was signaling his network that he was in trouble and that he needed help. And here's the sign. Look on the video that I'm going to show you now. This is the sign of someone signaling that he needs help. He needs to get out. Soon after this video was taken, the guards at the Jakarta detention center found Mr. Abello lying in his cells with a metallic wire wrapped around his neck. Did he try to kill himself? Was he attacked? That we do not know. There was no information provided by the police, no footage provided. Is it a coincidence? We must ask ourselves, what's going on here? Pedocriminals get arrested and suddenly they are found like almost hanging, or someone is trying to strangulate them. We need to get to the bottom of that, because it seems to me that there is a code, whether it's a code of honor, the famous omerta, like the mafia, the Sicilian mafia used to use, a word describing basically the law of silence. So now, have they been silenced, or do they silence themselves? Now the investigation will reveal that. We'll need to understand what's going on, because if someone tried to silence Abello on that day, they did a very poor job at it, because François Abello survived. As you can see, this is a very theatrical press conference. This is a PR exercise, and the Jakarta police is putting on a media stunt here, sending a very strong message to the foreigners, saying that basically the abuse of children on the Indonesian soil will not be tolerated and will not remain unpunished. However, it is extremely difficult to forget the amount of children that has been abused, that have been trafficked from Indonesia, but also from Bali, other place in Southeast Asia like Philippines and Thailand. This is a real problem. Pedocriminality is something international, and unfortunately, Indonesia and many Southeastern countries remain one of the major destinations in the world. Now let's go back to what I was saying. The guards at the detention center in Jakarta confirmed that when they got into the cell, Mr. Abello was found with a wire wrapped around his neck. Now, we know from the spokesman of Mr. Abello that the 65-year-old man was found unresponsive in the cell. Now, there was a declaration that was made by the doctor, Mr. Umar Shahab, who works at the National Police Hospital in Jakarta, and he confirmed that Mr. Abello arrived on Monday, the 13th of July, and he had sustained a severe neck fracture, which has consequently and subsequently hindered the oxygen supplies, but his condition was stable. Now, what he says afterwards is that a day later, his condition deteriorated very rapidly due to the lack of oxygen, the lack of supply of oxygen to his brain, and 3 days later, he was found dead in his bed. So that's the official story, which is absolutely bizarre. And I would love to get some doctors, if any of you guys are doctors, to give us maybe a better idea of, is that really the way it happens? How can you arrive with a neck fracture and being completely stable and then a day later deteriorate completely and to the point that you're going to die from your neck fracture, or because there was not enough oxygen going to the brain? My understanding is that normally they induce a coma to make sure that they're going to preserve the vital organs during the time the body is recovering. That's what I believe. So if you have any idea about that, it would be very interesting to hear about what you have to say, and put your comment in the box below. All right, now Mr. Abello's spokesman, Mr. Yunus at the hospital, confirmed that the guards at the Jakarta detention center were questioned. The cell was examined. This was part of the death investigation of Mr. Abello. Now, what we're going to get from this investigation is two clues. The first one is that, and it will be provided by the Jati Police Hospital forensic team. They were in charge of the autopsy, and they will confirm they will conduct only external post-mortem examination of the body of Mr. Abello. Then soon after, the body was of France, the body of France. France was actually the nickname of Mr. Abello on the street of Jakarta, and his body will be handed over to the French government via their embassy in Jakarta. And the second clue that they provided is quite interesting, and we're going to focus on that one. It was a picture of Mr. Abello's body, and it was provided to the local press, but also to the international press. This will be basically the last picture of the investigation, and we are meant to believe this is Mr. Abello. So here's the picture. All right, so now we're all looking at the same pictures, nothing really suspicious. We can't really see the face, the body is just presented as the body of Mr. Abello, and we're meant to believe this is him. Now, as an investigative journalist, obviously, we owe to ourselves, we owe to our audience to do a little bit of more digging, trying to find out the source of this picture, and more importantly, if there are potential other sources for these pictures. So what we do is we use a tool called Google Reverse Image. It's just allowed us to find out if there are more potential image from different sources, and that's exactly what we did. And to our surprise, what we found was absolutely astounding. We basically found that this picture was used by the same police station, okay? The same police station, the Japri police station in Karmat, and they were basically using these pictures back in 2016. Here's the pictures, and this is what the article is saying. I translated it for you. The police prepared to lift the body of Japri police informant to the hearse of the Sukanto Police Hospital, Kramat Jati. On Wednesday, January the 2016, Japri apparently threw himself into the Siliwung River. He was found dead in the West Flood Canal during a raid on a drug dealer in the Matraman areas on Monday, January the 18th. This is a photo taken by Rosa Pangaban from Antara. What this is telling you is basically this guy was an informant for the police. Okay, he was involved during the raid on a drug dealer. Probably the drug dealer found out, probably got rid of him, or perhaps the police didn't want him to talk about anything and got rid of him. We don't know. The only thing we can be sure of is that the picture that has been offered as Mr. Abello's body is not the one of Mr. Abello's body, but of this very man that I just described to you. So why is he lying to us? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. Now, it goes without saying that the government had to provide a statement. It's quite embarrassing. They wanted to provide a statement for the press, and they did so. They did it through their Ministry of Social Affairs with Mr. Julian Batubara. He's going to provide a statement on July the 9th, 2020, explaining that his ministry will basically extend all necessary assistance to the 305 child that was abused, the children that was abused and molested by Francois Camille Abello. So clearly he's saying, we're here for you, sorry for what happened. Now, what we're interested as part of being an investigator is to understand two things. Number one is the computer science, the forensic evidence, what they found on his computer. who was linked to the chat room, who was basically where these pictures were going to, where the films were sent to, how many did he record it? I mean, we're talking about someone that has been there for 5 years. We're talking about someone that had a lot of micro cameras on his walls. We're talking about someone that is professionally equipped, since he has a shop back in France that is specialized in video and photographic equipment. So he's a professional, he has computers, he has recording abilities, and for 5 years he's gonna take pictures, record video of young Indonesian boys and girls, and no one is talking about that. So that's what the press, the MSM, everyone, nobody's talking about what's truly important in that. We are just left with the impression that he was a retired Frenchman in Indonesia, simply basically enjoying his retirement, molesting, abusing young boys and young girls for a little bit of money, and then on top of that filming them for his own pleasure. That's the story we've been sold. But there's so much more than that. We know there's more than that because we kept on digging, and what we did is simply basically starting to look in the past of Mr. Abello, look at his entourage, look at his business back in France, and trying to understand who is Mr. François Camille Abello. Alright guys, we are coming to the end of this first episode, the first part of The Dead Frenchman Tells No Tell. I hope you've enjoyed the video. The part 2 is going to be extremely interesting. This is where we are going into the nitty-gritty of this investigation. We are going to draw conclusion, but also we're going to explain to you the links in between Abello's business associates, Abello's business in France, his entourage, and how these guys are linked to the Epstein Black Book. Yes, I said the Epstein Black Book because we will find out in the second episode that indeed Mr. Abello and his entourage were extremely linked and very close to the Epstein contact, the one that we found on his black book, but also people that are today, some of them are behind the bars, they've been arrested for crime and rape against children, and others are still under investigation for abusing and molesting kids. So this is part of a network, there's no doubt about it. If you want to find out, join me in the second episode. For now, I'd invite you to subscribe, to like, to follow, to comment. Comments are very important to me, as you know. And then, of course, this is my first videos in English, so don't be too hard on me. I'll get better with, within a month or two. But for now, I deliver on my promise. I did video in English. I hope this was interesting, and I'll be seeing you in the second part of The Dead Frenchman Tells No Tell. Thank you very much. Ciao.